They say every superhero needs a theme song. I guess we gon' need a couple cause the team's strong. We like King Kong, mixed with Godzilla. Podcast, but my cast make the pod rilla. First up is Mako Blue. With her words and her curves, she can take your boo. J-zoe slays hoes if you say so. He be playing with they feelings like it's Play-Doh. The next Mac is Bubba, the Pack's little brother, the ass-eating, pussy-licking, black nipple sucker. We talking little siblings, here comes Happy. Her van is full of Scoopy snacks, here comes Scrappy. Lotus gonna notice all the threats in your future. Joris gonna wake you up and get you an Uber. Lyric got the spirit of a hip-hop head. Cross her across, madam, you gon' get shot dead. Molly Sweet might give a man cavities. Jenna Reese make them fall like gravity. And last of the rogues is Axel Bros. If you wanna know about me, just ask the hoes. Every Tuesday, we gon' drop bombs in here. No Disclaimers Podcast.com is here. Yeah.
Hey, welcome to the No Disclaimers Podcast. I'm Jenna Reese, the Drake of Poetry, and I'm here with Axel.
Yo, yo, yo.
Blue.
Say what? Say word.
j-zoe.
What up, hoes?
Juris.
What's good? What's good?
Lotus.
What up, though?
And Lyric.
Hello, lovely people.
So, our lovely listeners, thank you all for tuning in again. Now, I know you all know, we talk about ratchet shit, we talk about conscious shit, but do not forget, we are also writers. We are dope-ass poets. And so today is all about the arts. And first, I want to see, if you all, know what's going on with Trump proposing this budget that is going to greatly affect the arts.
Fuck that nigga and everything he stands for.
Still not my president, though. It seems like every day, not even, I wish I could say every week, but every day we have to ask ourselves that question, like, what dumb shit has Trump done today?
And before, we get too much into it, I just wanted to know if someone could give our listeners a quick recap on what the fuck Trump is fucking up today in regards to the arts.
He's defunding our programs. I mean, the biggest one for me would be PBS. I just don't understand that. Like, that makes zero sense to me, how you could completely cut that. Not only that, but I'm a part of a community service group, and that's under the umbrella of AmeriCorps. And if he were to cut that along with all the other, he's talking about cutting after school programs too. So he's basically taking away things that, in my opinion, are valued, not because they bring money in, but because of the holistic experience that they give to people who don't know how to express themselves.
He's taking away from the kids, bro. Like, why would you take anything away from the babies? You give them as much exposure and as much extra as you can. And to take that away from the children is disrespectful, in my opinion.
I would say that this has actually been a long time coming, because they've already for a while they've already taken away music programs, art programs from schools, and trying to push this agenda of STEM, which requires more funding, which requires them to have computers, not just pawn shop laptops, but like real working functional computers that they can master, because it's all this technology based driven industry. And I guess the idea that cutting a few arts programs here will save a little bit of money, it's actually, that's beyond untrue. Like, cutting the arts programs that he's talking about cutting, it's not going to cut that much from the budget. they're still going to find themselves scratching for different programs, cut a little bit here, cut a little bit here. But it's basically things that they don't want to pay for, in my opinion, that conservatives don't want to pay for because it's not their problem. And there we have the issue of privilege rearing its ugly head again.
Well, you know, the idiot in charge of the budget and whatnot wants to cut after school programs, and he said that there is no evidence linking that feeding children and Meals on Wheels and these sort of things lead to doing better in school, getting better jobs, or doing things. I would want to see how he does his job after not eating for a week. Let's starve him for a week and see how well he functions all week long.
Amen, girl.
Actually, so I just to sort of play devil's advocate, not completely, but that's actually true that they don't necessarily help kids to improve their test scores or their academics or whatever. But that's
to me,
not
what
the
that
point.
Sounds like that's no different than when we say there's no evidence that GMOs or hormone treated cows directly. Just because somebody hasn't done a study, and it doesn't have to directly correlate, it's just a program that is necessary. How can you expect kids to come and perform well when they don't even have brain food?
Well, that's what I was actually getting to. It's this idea that if the program doesn't directly improve their grades or their academic performance, it's not valuable. But that's not what makes these after-school programs valuable. That's not what makes music and arts programs in schools valuable. They're valuable because they're giving another dimension of learning to children. That way, it's not always this stress about your grades. It's like, it's literally providing holistic support to these kids. They're meeting their emotional needs, making sure that they're fed. Not only that, but like when I say fed, not just by food, like you have to feed the child. You have to feed children learn differently than not than adults, because adults at one point in time were kids, but it's something about the way a child is learning that we don't give them enough credit for. Children are incredibly smart and they have to teach themselves. And by giving them programs, especially arts programs, I feel like taking art out of schools is probably the worst decision that they could make. Because what you're going to find is that these kids are not well-rounded enough. They're not adjusted. They don't mature into like well-adjusted adults because they literally don't have a means of expressing themselves. And so what you find is that they're furthering this sort of pipeline of creating, factory workers, creating kids who cannot think for themselves.
I think it also gives kids a break though, right? Like I hated school so much growing up, man. I can say that now. I have degrees. I don't give a fuck. But I hated it every day. I hated it. Like I still hate it right now. So on those days where I knew, oh shit, I got art at the end of the day today. Like at the very least, I had that to look forward to. So it was cool. Like I could deal with that. But if it's just math, science, reading, like I literally cannot even imagine going to school as a kid that age and having nothing arts related outside of those core. That's crazy.
I agree completely. And like, I really don't understand why they're trying to cut these meals. Like some of these kids, that's the only meal they're going to have that day. Like it's bonkers that they want to take money from that. And considering we waste so much money on all this extra stuff, because in that budget, proposed budget, they're trying to add another $54 billion to defense budget and whatnot. And then we're spending millions of dollars to keep the first lady and his son in New York. I saw some stuff about that.
And keep him in private school, much less.
Yep. And so that's why they don't care, because most conservatives, like, they are more wealthy and they can afford to keep the kids in private schools. Their kids aren't worrying about school lunch or any like after school programs or anything like that. They're getting private tutors and like all that jazz. Like it doesn't affect them, so they don't give a shit.
Exactly what you said about private education. The bitch in charge of our education system is all about privatized schools, and we're going to defund so much public school. We're going to see a lot of very tragic things happen. And the thing about it is, that's even scarier as somebody who's young and thinking about their future and having kids in the future, while I hope that we are not stupid enough to vote for him for another 4 years, yes, there is some light at the end of the tunnel. He's
already campaigning.
It doesn't matter. We have to make it through the next 4 years. But the thing about that is, even if he doesn't get reelected, with the things that they set into place now are going to be so hard to undo. It is so much easier to get something in place than it is to get rid of it. That's why we still have bullshit like FCAT and just all of these things that make no sense. And it's not getting any better. It's getting worse.
They've actually changed the name of the test. And
I
that
know
is
they did. It's the
kind of
same
like-
bullshit though.
For real.
I mean,
No,
but they have multiple tests now. It's all of them are EOC. So you have to take, well, as far as Florida is concerned, you have to take a test for each class in which you are in. It's not just one FCAT test where, oh, you have to take reading, writing, and math. It's like you have to take American history, you have to take reading, you have to take writing, you have to take social studies.
Oh, they do that in New York. That's a very common program.
Do they really?
Mm-hmm.
Something that I find interesting, like as a school resource, and this is something that has really sort of changed the way, because I'm a teacher, and this has sort of changed the way that I look at each individual student, is in the beginning of the year, I gave them a multiple intelligence quiz. And the whole idea behind multiple intelligences is that, one, not all children learn the same. And so it's identifying what is their giftedness, where does their learn, how do they learn best? Do they learn best with music? Because I was one of those kids. It's like I could memorize anything if I put it to a song. Or are they more interpersonal? Are they more visual? Are they visual spatial? Like, do they learn by looking at things? Are they kinesthetic? Do they have to touch, what they're learning about? Do they have to be more hands-on with those activities? And so it's like, even considering the fact that when you take away arts programs, you're immediately sort of not discrediting, disadvantaging the students who learn best through artistic means, like through music. Like if I hadn't had music in school, or if I didn't have music, like if I didn't have certain activities weren't related to music, I wouldn't have been interested or invested, and I would not have had teachers to properly invest in me.
And looking at it like in terms of mental health, the arts is a really big way to a lot of people cope, and just kind of taking that away from kids. I feel like not only are you preventing them from being well-rounded, not only are you preventing them from, being able to explore gifted or intelligent, but you're also robbing them of ways to effectively cope with life and to express themselves. And I just feel like that's complete and utter bullshit. It's complete and utter bullshit.
I think I have a different take and perspective on all of these things, although I do really agree with what everybody has said so far. But I went to a performing arts middle and high school. So I was doing piano throughout the course of my middle school and piano and vocal throughout the course of high school. And to be in a setting in which you actually have classes where you can release from all the other crap that you've had during the rest of your day, or you at least have those moments where you can do something that you enjoy. Like I'm a big math nerd. It is what it is, but I'm also a big music nerd. So the fact that I had those few classes during my day where I could do nothing but fool around on the piano or sing my cute little heart out, it compared and gave me a release to the fact that I was doing science on a regular basis, the fact that I was doing math on a regular basis, the fact that I had English classes on a regular basis, and all of these more difficult things that you have to go through for school. And those were my release, and they were the most perfect times of my day. And to take that away from students, to take away their release, to take their level of comprehension, because like Blue said earlier, if you ever put anything to a song, man, I got it memorized. Even right now, I can tell you all the presidents from 1st to 45 now, fooling around with Nickelodeon when they had the kids pick the president and they put the whole thing to the song. I know that whole thing because it was literally set to music. Like, and the function of the arts in whichever realm you delve in is such a proponent to the things that you learn and the things that you need in life, and those other harder courses that you have to go through in school. it assists them, but it also gives you a release. So to take that away from children is so disrespectful in my eyes. Like, might not have had the chances that I had being as far as like a performing arts middle and high school, to think that children may not have or have the ability to have those experiences hurts my heart, because that was life to me. I don't know how I would have made it through middle and high school without those things.
See, I agree with Lyric. I understand that point, but in the end, it's about keeping everybody well-rounded, because like Blue said, not everyone learns the same way. Some kids are analytical, so they'll learn better through technology and computers, math, etc. Some people like to touch and feel and work with things with their hands. So it's all dependent of that. But I find it ironically stupid how they'll force this agenda of well-roundedness as you get towards upper level things like college, where in these smaller ages, they're trying to knock that out altogether, which is a complete change of the diaspora of education. So I think this is just complete bull.
Agreed, 100%. Like, especially with the part about the fact that the general well-roundedness, like that they do in college, which is really a whole conversation I could have about how that's bullshit in college. Because that's the time that it should be, I guess, vice versa. Like, you should be more directed and specific about what you're being taught and what classes you're taking, even though they kind of force you to take all these random classes or whatever. But yeah, man, support the arts. Like, we need the arts. Like, I can't imagine a future without music classes, without painting classes, without like ceramics or whatever. Like, what if there's like the next, Picasso waiting to be like, waiting to emerge, but we take away these programs and like, there goes painting, there goes music. We're just gonna have a whole bunch of fucking mumble rappers and like everything's just gonna be trash. Like, we need to support the arts, people. We do.
It hurts my feelings because they've taken so much out of schools already, as far as the home economics programs for, general public schools, rather. Home economics, they've taken out computer courses. They've taken out all of the little things that would give people release and that they would find interest in. And they've replaced them all with just nothing but hardcore standard reading, writing, math, so on and so forth. And the fact that you don't give a child a break is so disrespectful in my eyes, and it hurts my feelings because they've taken so many things out already. For you to take more out is just like, where they don't have a chance. Where do they go?
They don't have anywhere to go. Like, and sadly, depending on their environment, their situation, these after school programs, like these areas, these are safe havens, and these are safe spaces for them. So if you're just like sending them from school back to wherever they're at, it might lead to some bad stuff.
I think that Lyric brought up a very good point, because growing up, I always wanted to be a movie critic. And I have a younger sister who always wanted to be a chef. And there is no place in school to cater to our desire to be those things. Granted, my mom was very strict academically, and she wasn't going to let either of those things happen anyway. But in the event that we did want to exercise those interests, like, there's no place in school for them already, right? So it's already exclusionary from the beginning. So to further create that, to, where do those students, how do you become better at music, become better at art? How do you even find that interest if you don't know you have that natural talent inside of you? Where do you bring that out if not school? If they're taking more and more programs from students every day and focusing on those art or non-art subjects, it's kind of just, you feel like there's no place for you. And I definitely felt that growing up. So I don't know, it just sucks overall to me.
Honestly, I feel like you make a really valid point, simply because something that I knew from a very young age, college isn't for everybody. College is mainly the place if you have math, science, so on and so forth, whatever those topics may be, that's the place where you go to get further learning. However, that does not mean that there are not jobs and positions and things that you can do outside of that. Like, I have cousins that are brilliant, but they're not book people. They like working with their hands. They like fixing things. Like, they could be mechanics. They could be this, that, and the third. And for you to take all of those things out of school, they feel like there's not a place in which they belong. And I understand that core curriculum is a great thing, and that there are basic things that you need as far as life is concerned and things of that nature. But when everybody is not cut out for books and college and all of those other things, and for you to take away the things that may bring them livelihood or may introduce them to something else that they might love even more than that, is that, what's the word I'm looking for? That cuts a child. When you don't know where you belong, or you don't know where you fit in and what you should be doing, that really hurts a child. And to take that away from them, as far as the arts goes, or as far as even other professions go, because I feel like they've taken a lot of those things out of school as well. You're not just hurting away budgeting, you're hurting society, because now these people don't understand where in which they belong.
That point, exactly what I mean with this whole situation. As a kid myself, I was always good at the book part of school, but what really kind of helped me find my own way was the fact that I started writing about everything, just from how, the day looked to how beautiful a sunrise is. So I think cutting away from all of this is just completely stupid and asinine, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's not going to be beneficial. We have to resist this.
No, I really agree with all the points, and I really think it's a fucked up thing to cut off the arts. And one important thing that popped up was when j-zoe said, why he started writing. And so what I want to ask all of you all is, what got you into writing? What got you into performing?
I don't even know. I started writing because of music. I listened to music before I listened to poetry personally. And like poetry, music is poetry, it's just with a beat. And I listened to music, specifically like Eminem, and the way that he manipulated words really got me like fascinated with like how like words can be used to convey a message. And so I started writing young when I was in like middle school. I started with like the typical Emily Dickinson style, like poems, like the little couplets, rhyme every line, every other line or whatnot. And then it just picked up from there, and eventually got to college and started writing more spoken word. And yeah, music is the foundation of my writing style and like my poetry.
To piggyback off of our prior conversation about the arts being important, what really got me into writing, where it started helping me becoming a necessary thing in my life, was when my dad passed away. But before that, I learned that I was a good writer and I was okay to write. And it was through school programs. Our school actually had a little mini in-house publishing. It was, really lame, but they binded books for you. You were able to illustrate it, and they would have reading nights. And those are the kind of things that encourage children. A teacher that says that they see something that you have and you're really good at it, and it motivates you. It makes you want to do these things. So if we're cutting out certain kinds of arts, because I can't imagine that a small publishing group within our school, it would still exist if they cut all this funding, because it was small, but I'm sure it still costs money for the pages and the binding. Like, we're tripping over teachers making too many copies and stuff like that. They're limited to how many copies they make of regular things.
Man, don't even get me
a month. But no, for my adult life and my teenage years, writing got me through everything. And I was not willing to share that. I wrote for me and me only. And then I joined a poetry org where I met most of you beautiful people, and they forced me onto the stage. They told me I couldn't be a selfish poet anymore. And that's why I'm here.
I couldn't breathe when I was younger. I think it was a mix of being gay and trying to hide that, and also not really fitting in at school because I was so academically inclined at a school that wasn't, and it wasn't even my choice. My parents were just so strict. So I think this happens a lot to people. My teachers were like all over me all the time, like, oh my gosh, such a good student, blah, blah, blah. Which on the other side of that, the students hated me. So I didn't have a place anywhere. Like I was young and black and gay and didn't feel connected to my family, didn't feel connected to anybody at school. Like it just felt like I was suffocating all the time. And naturally I started writing, journaling, poems, scribbling. Literally, if you go back through some of my journals when I was a kid, like they're literally just pages where I just scribbled all over it, and that's all I wrote for the day. It was like a release like nothing that I felt before, and it just stuck with me, and it became the way that I expressed myself throughout my entire life.
So I had a similar experience, but it was also different. So to explain that, I had a similar experience because I also felt like sort of out of place. I started writing poetry in 5th grade. I remember that because when the Twin Towers fell, we watched it. Like we were in class watching the towers collapse, and all I remembered thinking is my uncle, because I knew my uncle lived in New York, and being in 5th grade, I just didn't have an understanding that New York was big as shit, and that he was probably nowhere near the Twin Towers. But I just felt like he was in trouble, or I felt like he was there to be like inhaling all of the, I guess, the dust and whatnot. And so I wrote a poem called God Bless America. And I remember my teacher, she made a really big deal, not a big deal, but she put it up on the wall on the bulletin board outside. And that made me feel really, it made me feel really good. And my mom, who's always sort of taken charge of my education, she had me on that college prep track. But my teacher was the one, my 5th grade teacher was the one to tell her and encourage her to put me in an art school. And so from 6th grade to 12th grade, I was in a creative writing program. And what I found was that I had all of those feelings, like feeling like I just didn't belong, even in the art school where, like we don't have cliques per se, but we had arts areas. So like, the creative writers, they hung out together. The art people hung out together. Band people hung out together, dancers, and so forth. And so being a part of a writing community where I was constantly getting feedback on my work, where I was in high school going through all the feelings, all the emotions. And that's when I started doing spoken word. I started performing the poetry that I had been writing. And that sort of opened up a new avenue for me because I used that. And I also would write songs. So I was writing lyrics. And so it was a means of me expressing myself and me giving myself a place in a world where I did not feel like I belonged. And I was sort of looking for an outlet, and I was sort of looking for people I could identify with, not just based on skin color, not just based on like your community or your background or where you're from, but like based on what it is that you love, your interests, your love for poetry or your love for music. Or art in general. I was into the arts, but that was fully encouraged by my teachers. I felt like if I did not have not even my writing teachers, but my English teachers, because honestly, writing for me was a punishment. When I was younger, like 3rd grade, 4th grade, it was a punishment. I was told that I had to write something because I had a mouth and it would get me in trouble. And so the only way to sort of right my wrongs was by literally writing.
Funny enough, I think I had a little bit of a different experience between Blue and Juris. I felt like I belonged in a multitude of groups, and all of those pressures and things of that nature got to me to the point where it was like I couldn't think straight. And when I can't think straight, even now, I resort to writing everything down. And I used to do it in a notebook just because I felt like my thoughts were better placed on paper than in my head, because I couldn't process them if they were in my head. So I would write everything down. And after, when I would read it back later, I was like, oh, this sounds kind of cool. And some of my friends and things of that nature, like I would read it to them or share it with them, and they were like, yo, that was pretty cool. So that was kind of how I got my first start into writing poems and being, I guess, what some would call a poet, was just because I had too much shit. I had so much shit in my head, and I couldn't process it because there was too much of it. So I put it down on a piece of paper, and it just happened to flow really well. And that was where I got my start.
So my start with writing, I needed an escape. I just wasn't fucking with my life. I didn't fucking like it. I didn't like going to school. I was bullied a lot, bullshit reasons, all kind of stuff. And so writing was my escape. So when I first started writing, I started writing short stories. And they were basically the kind of life that I would want to have. And then I started sharing those with people, and people loved the shit. And I was like, what? So y'all saying I'm good at this shit. Okay. And I low-key liked attention issues and didn't think I deserved it. I low-key liked the attention that people were reading my shit. So I kept writing. And then as time went on, I went from doing short stories to, writing some poems here and there, even though trying out raps and stuff like that, because writing was my escape. And then as I became older, and then I went to undergrad, where I discovered the wonderful poetic lyricism and got into that. That's when I discovered spoken word poetry, and I got more into writing poetry. And then writing was no longer an escape for me. It became the way for me to be able to talk about my reality in ways that I felt like I wasn't allowed to before. So all this shit that I felt like I couldn't say to people, all the shit I felt like I couldn't think, I did that in writing, and then it became the way that I was able to say all the shit that was building up inside of me. So writing has always been like a huge thing in my life, whether it was short stories or poetry, and performing just kind of came along with it because I already liked doing public speaking, and I realized that I could kind of like command a room when I did it, and it just kind of came all together for me like that. But like, hearing all of this about writing, the importance of the arts, and just like why we do what we do, I want to go ahead and get into Henny for your thoughts, about what are some ways that those who are listening can improve their writing and improve their performing. Like what tips do you all have? So with that being said, this week's Henny for your thoughts is about, writing, like how you can improve your writing, how you can improve yourself as a performer.
The first tip I want to give out to our listeners is when you're writing, be raw. Don't hold yourself back. Like give 100, forget it, give it 200%, okay, of you, or else like the people that hear your piece won't really feel it. Like write about something you're passionate about and just really go in. Like don't hold anything back. Just, go above and beyond.
Here's something that I want to say to our page poets. And a page poet is somebody who needs love too. A page poet is somebody who does not think that they're a performer. You don't recognize yourself as a spoken word artist. You think you just write on paper, but it wouldn't sound good out loud, or you write for yourself. But it's important to share these things. And there's no one type of spoken word artist, and you should be able to perform. And I thought I was a page poet too. And in my early stages, and when I was trying to learn how to memorize a piece and be able to perform without the clutch of my paper in front of me, one of my favorite inspirations who made me perform, he was the president of our organization, Poetic Lyricism, Clee. He told me that when you are trying to memorize your piece, if you fuck up, you start at the very first line. And the reason why is it's muscle memory. You will always fuck up at that same spot because that is where you just have this muscle memory that stops you right there every time you get to that piece. And you'll get used to stopping at that part if you always stop there. So you want to take it all the way back from the top so that when you have it memorized, you have it memorized front to back in fluidity.
We have something for our page poets. If I could throw out a tip for those poets who prefer to spit on stage, don't write things for other people. Write them for you. At the end of the day, what you perform is personal to yourself, and how anybody else feels about it, care. Their opinion doesn't matter. What you portray on stage is for you, and that is your release, and that is how you get through things.
She's 100% true. If you were lying about it or it was a story that wasn't that close to your heart, you will know. Delivery is everything. And if you don't feel your words, no one else will.
Most definitely. Like, don't write for other people, write for yourself. Don't write the things that you feel like will get the audience to interact with you or yell out about a line or something like that. Write for you. Everything should be about you at the end of the day. Nobody else matters.
Don't ever focus on a rhyme. Let it flow naturally. Because when I first started, I was always focused on making it sound good. And usually you do that through rhyming. But you don't need that. Just speak from your heart and let the words flow out naturally.
To piggyback off of that, sometimes what you can do, and what you said is right. It's the most freeing thing to realize you can still write a dope poem and it be entirely free verse with no structure. But I think something that comes into play with that, and you'll notice just in the way most people just speak regularly, there's different tones and levels to your voice as you speak. So your poem may not rhyme, but it's the emphasis and the tone and what you put and deliver in certain words you say and how you say it and where this sentence lines up for you, and the pauses. Pauses sometimes are more powerful than the actual words you speak, because you say something really important and you give it a minute for the audience to let that sink in.
I feel like j-zoe tip was a shot at me because I know I don't believe in rhyming. But
Hell no.
But nah, I agree 100% that with what everybody's saying, really. But what Axel said is something that's really potent to me, because I don't know, like, I just feel like when I listen to funny pieces or pieces about Black pride, things that are like necessarily not connected to you in the now, like, you know, I can identify, oh, this person is a dope writer or this person is a dope performer, but the pieces that really stick with me are those pieces that are raw, those pieces that, like, you had to think about it for days, maybe even weeks before you even got on stage to spit it in front of somebody else, because you were like, is this too personal? Or do I want people to know this about me? Because after you finish performing pieces like that, like, you sleep better, your skin is clear, like, you feel better, you want to go for a run, like, the release that you get after those kind of performances, I can't. It's literally unexplainable. You just got to do it.
It's funny that you say that, because I feel like the pieces that I feel like are most personal to me are the pieces that everybody else loves. Like, I have quite a few heartbreak pieces because, you know, it happens. But those few heartbreak pieces that I have are the poems that everybody else stands for. Like, they want me to send them copies. They wish I would, like, print it out and laminate it so they could put it on their bedroom, like, walls. It's those pieces are the pieces. You think that nobody else feels the way that you feel, but you'd be surprised how many other people identify with you. So those are the pieces. When you feel like they're too personal, really, those are the pieces that you should spit the most.
With writing, attack subjects from different perspectives. What I mean that is, like, you can get raw and, like, write a piece, like a personal piece. Don't be afraid to write about a piece that everybody writes about, like Black history or like police brutality or whatnot. But don't just write the same thing. Like, if you heard a piece done a certain way, don't just write it the exact same way with different words. You know, like, try and attack it from a different subject, like a different perspective. Like, if you want to write about police brutality, you know, you could write it from the perspective of a parent of a child who's been a victim, or from a bystander who's walking down the street and viewing it, you know, as an outsider, or from the perspective of an ally, you know, someone who not necessarily has to deal with police brutality, but their friends are going through with it, you know, like, just trying to think outside the box. But I mean, at the end of the day, just write from your heart, though. Like, if you're not, don't just write a piece because you think that's what people want you to write. Like, just because such and such is going on right now, doesn't mean you have to write about that. If you're not, if you're not feeling it, you're not feeling it.
I personally believe that all writers should be selfish as fuck. Like I'm a selfish ass writer. I'm not gonna write anything that I'm not feeling. I don't even think about the audience. The only time I would kind of think about the audience is if I intend to perform it, and I don't think about them until afterwards. And so, because I feel like you want what you write to be true to you, and the only way to do that is to clear everybody else out of your mind. Just clear them out. So who cares if people want to hear this? You write whatever it is that needs to be written.
I really liked Axel's point. When I think about the poems that his tip, where I
Just the tip?
I hesitated to use that word, but anyway,
I heard it on the tip of your tongue. I couldn't resist.
The wordplay is wonderful.
Say it, girl.
So I thought immediately about Patricia Smith. She wrote a poem from the perspective of a white supremacist, a white male supremacist, and she's like a black woman with, like, at the time she had like braids in her hair, something like that, and she's performing the skinhead piece, and it changed my life. Because when we talk about putting like, my thing is tell your story, but tell a story that has not been heard before. And if that means taking another perspective on something that's already been spoken on, like, I've heard a lot of Black Lives Matter pieces over the past 2 years, and none of them have been original, like, just to be honest. And so it's like, consider another angle. Like, how can you look at this and contribute a story? Like, I want a story that is going to, like, I want something I can chew on. I need that Campbell's moment. I need that you're drinking some Coke, and you got that build up, that acid building up, and you gotta gasp it out. Like, I need that moment when it comes to a poem, because I need something I'm gonna be left thinking about for a while. Like, it's the same as after I read a good book. Like, I sit back and I just, like, think, like, damn, what the fuck did I just read? So when it comes to a good poem, and I mean like a fantastic poem, I'm looking for something I haven't heard before. It's a story, and it could be your own story, but what makes your story different from everything else that has been spoken?
I think from a writing standpoint, one thing I'd like to say is I'm a big music head. So I listen to a lot of different types of music. And a lot of the poems that I have in my repertoire right now are all based on or come from different songs that I've listened to that have affected me. So I feel like there was a point in time where I felt like, ooh, I'm writing too many poems based off songs. But if you don't sing that song to begin the poem, ain't nobody gonna know. Like, nobody else knows other than you. So if you're inspired by a song, that is great. And as far as performance goes, I know that I am very shy to bring the things that I think or the things that I've written to a stage, just because I feel like everyone else isn't going to identify with it or like it. And in recent times, I've come to know that that's not necessarily the case, but there's always somebody else that's going to identify with you. And when you get on stage, that moment is not for anyone else but you. That is for you to tell people what it is that you are going through and what it is that you felt, and to put it in words and make it beautiful. And whether they accept it or not is their business. What they think of you has nothing to do with you whatsoever. So when you get up on stage, as far as a performance aspect, like, you're spitting to a room of nothing, essentially. Like, perform it the same way you would perform it if you were in your bedroom, spit into your TV or your mirror, because nobody else in the room matters as much as you do. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people need to keep in mind when they perform, because really it's all about you. You feel like you need to please other people, but it's nothing but the way you feel and what you want to do. It's all about you at the end of the day.
You know, it's funny you say that because I'm always trying to feel out my audience. I try not to make it matter that much because you're right. Once you get in there, you just leave it all on the stage. But before I perform something, I always wonder if it's the right group for this. Will anybody in the room really understand that? And what you realize is you really do reach more people than you realize. And there will always be someone who does relate to you. But something a little different is that, Blue brought up is that, you should come at it from a different perspective. The other thing that has to be said about performing too is your poem doesn't actually have to be memorized. But if you get up there with a piece of paper or your phone in front of you, don't read from your phone. This is not a poetry reading where we're going to, cite some Edgar Allan Poe. Be yourself. Those are still your words. Your phone is just there in case you need it. The dopest performance I have ever seen in my life was in a poetry slam, and it is not common to see someone use a piece of paper in a poetry slam, but it's not against the rules. And this was at Southern Fried Poetry Slam in like 2011 or 12 when we were in Tampa. And this guy got up there and did the best Trayvon Martin piece I have ever heard in my life. And it was a little different. It was a little bit of a lot of things. And I had heard so many Trayvon poems at this time, but he did it from paper. And he had such conviction in everything he said. And he really felt this poem and it meant everything to him. And you ignored the piece of paper in his hand. If you're going to do it, sell it. Do it for you.
Performance and writing, yes, they're two different styles, but in the end of it, it's all about how you feel as a person, what you wrote on this paper or what you prepared to perform to others. When I first started writing, I never anticipated or ever planned on sharing my thoughts with anyone ever. But then I met all of y'all lovely people, and then Axel himself actually helped me learn how to translate that to a group of people, to actually iterate what I'm feeling on this paper to these people. One thing, and it's hilarious, that actually helps me perform is taking off my glasses because I can't see crap. And that ability to not see who I'm talking to makes me like lose all the anxiety in the world.
My tip for performing, my tip for performing is to just get comfortable. Whatever it is that you need to do to like de-stress, to get comfortable. Me personally, I partake in a libation before I get on stage, just a little bit, maybe about a shot. And I be feeling really good. I'm always really anxious, but I don't really have anxiety. It's hard
That never works out for me.
What, drinking?
Yeah, if I drink before a performance, like I'm gonna slur. I am. I'm just.
Well, don't get
I'm not
fucked up.
a drunk poet. I'm sorry.
Neither am I, yo. And I remember two of my favorite poets swearing by it, that they just drink their ass off and get on the stage. I don't know how. That's just not going to happen. It is not. I performed slightly tipsy once. Let me tell you, my legs were shaking like a motherfucker and I was in heels. And I was like, I hope nobody can see my legs wobble because I could feel it.
Man, performing intoxicated is a wonderful thing.
I might be down with some other influences, but fucked up on some lick, nah.
Oh shit.
But yeah, I'm not saying like you got to get like completely wasted, but just a little shot, like get some liquid courage. Like I don't think I would never.
Shot, but I'm telling you that there are poets, and we know some in our circle who get faded and hop on that stage and do it eloquently without messing up not a beat. Like,
I believe it.
I have to be like completely sober, and I have terrible anxiety. Like anytime I'm about to perform, I'm extremely anxious, and people never notice it. But whenever I finish a performance, I'm shaking, but no one ever sees it. And I don't know, when people ask about performance, it's hard for me to say anything because literally I just push through the anxiety. It's literally, I'm so used to anxiety, I just push through it, and it's almost like I zone out when I'm on stage. So the one thing that has helped me is making sure I'm prepared. I practice my piece over and over and over.
What definitely helped me was being a part of Poetic Lyricism. We do, at least 3 major staple shows that can have an audience up to 1,000 people or more. And I was nervous the first time I performed, and it was just in a little poetry spot. And I recognized, because my legs usually shake. Same thing Jenna said, that at the end of her performance, she's shaking. For me, it's the beginning, but as I kind of get into my zone, it sort of goes away. But they also shook the next time, which was the very first time I did it in a really big audience. And I'm pretty sure that was Language of Lingerie, which was an erotic poetry show. And I was in my lingerie on the stage. And what I learned after that, after doing that, when you perform a poem on the stage saying all kind of dirty things with the mouth you should not kiss your mama with, you realize ain't not a damn thing matters, and you can do anything at that point. I encourage each and every one of you to perform in an erotic show at least once. You don't have to be half naked like most of us were for this show, but it was college. But it is truly liberating, and I think nothing matters after that. And after that, you're not scared to do any other piece because you've sort of done the worst of it.
I have a similar tip, but I think you should be naked when you perform. Okay. But what I mean is, what you do is you get a trench coat, be butt naked underneath, or at least in your drawers, you know, because they say like, oh, picture the audience naked or whatnot. But now when you are just so exposed, like you get on there and just feel like, man, what am I afraid of? Like, I got this. And like, I don't know what it is with the stage. Like I get on and I touch the mic and I just get into a zone. And like with one like key specific recommendation I could say, like suggestion, is when you're performing your piece, perform it. Don't just read your piece, like whether you're doing a page poem, you're actually reading your piece, because you can perform a piece like really well even if you're reading it. Like you can go on YouTube and see a bunch of poets that are like reading from paper, but you would even know it if you closed your eyes. You know, don't just read it. But it shouldn't just sound like a regular conversation. Like really, you know, you're putting on a performance, you're putting on a show. Emphasize the words that need to be emphasized. You know, like if you got some punchlines, build up to it. You know, really hit it. If you got rhymes, you know, really enunciate. If you really want the rhyme to stick, you know, like I'm team rhyming. I've been working on like diversifying and like, you know, some pieces without rhyming, you know, too much, just to challenge myself. There's nothing wrong with rhyming or not rhyming, but just really hit it home. Like you want people to elicit the reaction that you want to hear. Like if you got a sad piece and you know people would normally cry from that piece, hit it, you know, spit that piece like to make people cry. You know, don't just like, oh, da 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 da. Like, nah, really like emphasize it, put your passion into it. If you angry, get angry, yell, scream, you know, take the time, take a breath, grunt, you know, make it fist like the Arthur meme, you know, do whatever you got to do, okay? But just really sell the piece. You know, I want to believe you. Make your piece believable.
I know we've all talked about performance and writing, you know, and 30/30 is coming up since April is National Poetry Month. And before we kind of get into what 30/30 is, what about those out there who are struggling with writer's block? What do we tell them?
Honestly, I felt like people don't have writer's block as much as they think they do. I'm a self-proclaimed overthinker, and even in the moments when I have writer's block, I think so many things. My mind jumps from one position to the next, to the next, to the next. And I found that in those moments where I feel like I have writer's block and I have nothing to write about, my thoughts are enough. And when your thoughts travel from one point to the next, those are actually really interesting poems and stories. So try when you feel like you have nothing to write about explicitly, try just writing down your thoughts and seeing where those take you. Sometimes those thoughts will take you into a poem in itself, and sometimes those thoughts will take you into certain topics that you can elaborate on. But I feel like that's a really good way to get out of writer's block, because that's helped me quite a few times.
I would also suggest listening to poetry. Like go to a poetry show or go on YouTube. Like you might hear something that like will inspire you. Also take a shower. I mean, you should already be showering, you know, daily. Don't be musty. But me personally, I think of the best lines in poems while I'm taking a shower. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's just the bathroom in general, acoustics. I don't know. But it's like them pores opening up and my mind opens up and it's awesome. Shower daily. That's my tip. Axel Pros.
It's funny that you say that, Axel, because I feel, and I have several unfinished poems about this topic. I truthfully feel that my best poetry will never be written. And it's because poetry comes to me at the most inopportune time where I just can't stop and write it down. I've tried to get better. I use the notepad in my phone, and that definitely helps. But my raw inspiration comes when I am so stressed out and have some deadline to do, whether it's for work or something in my personal life and some craziness. And something I'll say about writer's block, because I do take notes to myself to go back and write it. And I will say that I may sit down, I may write, I may be inspired, but it's never the direction that I had in my head when I decided to jot these notes down. And the other thing I'll say about that is it is okay to walk away from a piece and come back or never come back to it. If you have writer's block, sometimes the worst thing you can do, and it's even more alienating, is to sit there and try to force yourself to write about some shit you are uninspired to write about or just don't have the right words to say right now. But you might find yourself in a free verse or brainstorming session with yourself, writing something else. But I definitely do think that being around art, not just to go to a poetry show or watch YouTube videos of spoken word, but being around any kind of art can inspire you. Surround yourself by things that make you happy and inspire you to want to write. And I do agree with Axel too, but not for the same reason about showering. Sometimes you need to cleanse yourself and clear yourself in your mind, whether that's going to the park, whether it's showering, or sometimes get up and do them damn dishes because they might be looking at you while you sit at the kitchen table trying to write this piece. Just do whatever it is that could be blocking you in your environment.
I would say take a look at your old pieces. Like something that helps with my writer's block is like, because I've written a lot of poetry. And there's a lot of poetry I don't even look at or think about anymore. And so if I feel like I'm stuck or if I feel like I haven't written in a long time, I take that time to look at an older piece and I rework it. So I'll revise something that was in, or I will add to it, or sometimes I find myself just keeping everything, getting rid of everything but the title. So it depends on the level of like focus that I'm giving that poem, but I tend to rework old pieces. I find that helps me with my writer's block. And so I think that there are other poets, especially if you're a poet and you've been writing for a while, and you just feel like you don't like have anything to write about, or if you feel like you're stuck, rework an old piece.
If I could backtrack for a second, something that Lotus said about writing down the things that those random thoughts that she has. I had a friend that told me that when he has random thoughts for like poets or songs or things like that, that he doesn't write them down because he feels like that's disrespectful. Like if I'm anybody and I have a thought or a really dope line, I write it down immediately and then I can come back to it later and build a piece around it. And I feel like when you have those thoughts and you feel like you think of a few really dope lines that could potentially transform into a really great poem, screw anybody else who is around you, write the shit down, because if you don't, you're going to lose it and you'll never think of it again. And that's never a good thing. So when you have those few thoughts where really dope lines come to your head, I feel like that's the perfect opportunity to write something down and then transition to it later. Like Blue said, if you rework something that you already have down or rework a piece to something that you've already stated and elaborate more and see what you can do with it. So I think that's another really good way to get over writer's block.
Okay. So I hope you all will keep all those tips in mind, because next month, April, is National Poetry Month. And during April, there's something that happens that's called the 30-30 Writing Challenge. And the 30-30 Challenge is you challenging yourself to write something for every day during the month of April. And since the poets in your head of the No Disclaimers podcast love you so much, we have a topic list to help you out just in case you're struggling about what to write. Our topic list will be on our website, nodisclaimerspodcast.com, @_no disclaimers, and our Facebook as well, which you can find us at No Disclaimers Podcast. And to get you started, get your, pen, your paper, your phone, whatever it is. And here's 4 topics for the first 4 days. First one, letter to your worst ex. Number 2, message to your future self. Number 3, groceries and insecurities. And number 4, send nudes. So definitely keep that down to help you get started with our 30-30. Listen to us show you how this shit is done while you tune in to our rewind section with Juris.
Lately, I've been wondering about whether or not they give birth certificates to aborted babies. I've been writing about the 2 men I've loved whose mothers may or may not have considered abortion. First, a letter to a guy that I was never supposed to love. The day we met in that cheap hotel room for a nasty quickie was not the first time we met. I'd met you before, years ago in a dream, and a few days before that in a vision. I met you. I saw you coming. It's as if life was one big dress rehearsal until the moment you arrived, and I saw the signs. I warned you of the signs, but I did not take heed myself. So some could say that I deserved this hurt, but that would be a boring argument. We've been there before. We've been here before too. And I forgot to breathe when I stood next to you. Have you ever heard a human gasp for air in mid-sentence, heart attack style, slowed and steadied, spinning so fast that we are still the foregoing of dreams just to be here, and we shouldn't be here. This is a forbidden love, a strange fruit, lovers, but strangers too, enticed by things that can't be seen or explained. For that matter, you loved me. To say that you didn't would be a lie. To pretend that you didn't would be insulting. Whatever sin it may be, you loved me. The good thing about this love is, unlike so many who have come before you, I loved you too. It's just that I'd been hurt before, so I was protecting my parts. My heart. And that must be what it feels like to wonder if aborted babies get birth certificates. A letter to a guy that I loved too much. Promise me that when they get to the chapter about the love we had for one another in my life story, you'll make sure they do it right. Make sure they say that we fought hard. And when we decided to part ways, it wasn't due to a lack of trying or weakness of some sort, because we fought hard. We gave it all we had and then some. We failed classes and broke hearts. We lost friends and gave up on dreams. We committed unforgivable sins against gods and lesser beings in the selfish pursuit of what could be. Even when everything said that we could never be, you gave me all of you and I all of me, until the day we decided to part ways to be free. And because we knew we never see each other again, we made love like lovers who knew that they never see each other again. We made promises we had intentions of keeping, but knowing that we never really would. We made plans we both backed out on a few times before we stopped trying to make plans altogether. We professed loves deeper than what they really were and deeper than they ever really had been. We apologized for things we had done purposely. We accepted lies from one another as truths. We made false agreements of keeping in contact. We mended broken hearts caused by one another. We put everything must go signs on our feelings in what will later be remembered as the worst yard sale in history. We love and lost in the same night. We deconstructed a love we spent half a decade building. In the seconds between I love you and goodbye, we did one of the hardest things we ever had to do, saying I love you and goodbye. We consoled each other when we cried. We said I love you and goodbye. And that's what it feels like to wonder if aborted babies get birth certificates.
That was Juris with Do Aborted Babies Get Birth Certificates? Next we have Blue.
The federal government will never agree to cease construction of the Dakota Access Pipeline. Too concerned about American consumers, motivated by money more than politics, up to their usual tricks, they keep the reservoir on reservation. But we can learn a lot from the Sioux of Standing Rock, who stand their ground, resisting legislation, opposing law enforcers, and digging their own trenches. See, they know wolves when they see them. The same one pulling the wool over our eyes, because the largest pipeline ever constructed doesn't run underground but through our nation via the corruption of public school education, a system to which students enrolled incessantly fall victim if they're Black, Latino, disabled, or low income. Underserved and overlooked, no wonder they're disruptive. They need holistic support, not an attitude adjustment. Yet they are pushed out of learning environments and shoved into youth detention centers, where they substitute teachers for private school vendors and replace instruction with correction. Our education system has shifted its model from factory to prison. So any disciplinary action will send this message: bad kids will be arrested or fail. School suspension is just one step closer to jail. Dear Board of Education, why are our children's futures for sale? Are you so bored of educating young people that you would willingly release them into the hands of police and correctional facilities? Don't you know outsourcing discipline to alternative programs is a form of mass incarceration? Where is the justice for our juveniles? When will we decriminalize our Title Is? Why are there more school resource officers than guidance counselors? Is zero tolerance a part of the curriculum now? How long will the word student and prisoner be synonymous? You don't have to be an economist to see just who is taking stock in children. Private investors are mistaking livestock for children, turning profit at the cost of academic improvement. They have prison beds prepared for failing students taking standardized tests for the first time in the 3rd grade who are fair game under federal law. No Child Left Behind should have been called No Child Can Escape. Public schools are merely holding cells for future inmates. This fate is a product of the tough on crime era, during which we started seeing teen criminals as super predators. They took extra security measures after the Columbine massacre, and now everyday students must face metal detectors, walk in single file lines, swipe IDs, and pass uniform checks. Students who don't meet these expectations are frequently met with hostility. Harsh discipline for minor offenses further pushes students on the path to imprisonment. I don't know which is worse. The fact that punishment disproportionately affects more Black and brown men, or the fact that it begins in preschool. If 18 is the legal age of accountability, then why are toddlers getting expelled? These are not circumstances under which students can excel because they were never intended to. They are bad apples, unruly, more likely to fail, drop out, or end up in juvie. They are subjects of social control. They are future sources of cheap labor, funneled like crude oil.
That was Blue with School to Prison. Next, we have Lotus.
I still remember what it was like meeting you. And although my feelings may seem hot and cold, I assure you they were always on time. I want to spend an eternity with you, leaving our legacy, living out love and doing it everywhere. On park benches, my mama's bed, the driver's seat of my car, during lectures that could never be more important than you. I want to do it all with you. Tell everyone about you in such vivid detail, like how powerful you feel with my fingers wrapped around your tools. I'd let you mark me, write haikus on my heart, soliloquies on my sleeves, and rhythmically verse villanelles tracing the ventricles of my heartbeat. They'd find you in the palm of my hands. Following happy trails along my lifelines, you could be such a bittersweet tragedy in the palm of my right hand. I'd grip your fragile body with my left hand, holding tightly so the wind may never blow hard enough to take you away. I only wish I knew how to give you more than just the quickies on my notepad before I clock in for my next shift, or that I could be a better mother to your children. I wish I didn't play favorites with your bastard children birthed after meeting the bottom of bottles. I wish I didn't treat you like the bottom bitch. Curling up to you only on the nights my pillow can't seem to hold my tears as gracefully as you do. You deserve better than me. Recognition, publication, gratification, poetry. I wish I knew how to dedicate myself to you. Signed, your part-time lover, who needed something to write about to keep her warm tonight.
So shout out to Juris Blue and Lotus for those dope ass pieces. And with that in mind, we want to hear what you all spit. We want to hear how dope you are. And so what we're gonna do, we have a contest. And the deadline is May 7th. And we want you to send us your poetry, your pieces. And the ones chosen will be featured on a future podcast or our summer feature show in June. Check out our website, IG, Twitter for more information. Thank y'all for listening this week. Be on the lookout for our list of writing topics for 3030 and more information about our contest. Thoughts from the poets in your head.
If ball is life, then writing is creation.
Resist, rebel, repeat. The arts will never retreat.
Writing is either a vacation from your reality or the thing that brings you back to it.
I made a promise to myself that I'd never stop writing again. Write even when it hurts.
Writing is fighting. Be Muhammad Ali, not Ronda Rousey. Find your niche, then run with it like your life depends on it. It does.
Write until you can't breathe. It's the only way you'll be able to start living again.
Baby, 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 baby.